Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the El Cajon City Council meeting. The meeting is called to order, and I'd like to ask the city clerk to call the roll.
All council members are present.
Great. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The city clerk posted orders of adjournment of the July 23rd, 2019 meeting and the agenda of the August 13th, 2019 meeting in accordance with state law, council, and housing authority policy. We have no presentations on today's agenda, and that brings us to agenda changes. Staff, do you have any agenda changes?
Mr. Mayor, we have no changes to the agenda.
Council, any agenda changes? That brings us then to consent items. Consent items are routine matters enacted by one motion according to the recommendation listed below. With the concurrence of the City Council, a council member or person in attendance may request discussion of a consent item at this time. Council members, do you wish to pull any consent items? Staff, do you wish to pull any consent items? Angela, do we have speaker cards for consent items?
We have no cards, sir.
All right. Then I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent items. Second. Moved and seconded. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Oh. This is like a baseball team pitching a no-hitter. That's the fastest we've gone through all that, I think, ever. That brings us to public comment. At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority Successor Agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time that the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. However, City Council and Housing Authority members may briefly respond to statements or questions, and an item may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, do we have any cards under public comment?
Yes, sir. We have 3 speakers. The first one is Cajon Kim.
Hi, welcome.
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Cajon Kim. I'm here to introduce the Kim Center for Social Balance and request an historic proclamation. We are here. Sorry. This is Deanna Schmidt.
Hi.
Hi. The Kim Center is striving to create gender equity in the workplace by helping communities and employers achieve progress through structured action plans based on metrics. Thank you, Mayor Wells, for your extending your forward-thinking invitation to speak to the council when we met at a SANDAG meeting. Right now, communities are appearing in the news every day for heartbreaking reasons, from shootings to abuses of power. What if regular stories came from San Diego about our increasing gender justice in the workplace, about our reducing homelessness, poverty, violence, and human trafficking as a result? A few years ago, the UT published that the San Diego region could increase its GDP by $23 billion within 10 years of achieving workplace gender equity. Imagine being able to say, "We did it." The Kim Center has developed a collaborative effort to make this a reality. Together with key regional leaders, we're creating innovative products and programs that help communities and employers understand what gender equity looks like, how to get there, and how to measure progress. Now that you know a little about the Kim Center, I would like to propose that the City of El Cajon proclaim Workplace Gender Equity Day and help San Diego become the first county in the country to have every city unite behind this cultural statement. I look forward to speaking soon again with Mayor Wells and reaching out to the rest of the council. In the meantime, I invite you to learn more about the Kim Center at kimcenter.org. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Jim Sirigliano.
Hello, sir. Welcome.
Hello, Mayor, Council, staff. Real quickly, Deputy Mayor Goebel, you never needed training wheels, okay? You did a fine job last time. I'm here to ask if anyone on the council or the staff had taken any time to look at about the smart meters pamphlet I had circulated last time. And I wish you would consider it and look at it, because along with CAP, I think it's a very, very important issue. And I know you're busy, but just look at that first presentation and you'll have a little better understanding. Or if you have any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And then again, let's see. I'm going to keep speaking about Form 700 and 460, okay? Mr. Ortiz, you asked me a question. I remember this when I mentioned this to you last time about putting down your home address. But I noticed on a lot of the forms from last year, many of the council people that were running, used the city as their home address. And I can understand why, maybe fear of people knowing where you live or anything like that, but just for your information. And as you know, the Fair Political Practices Commission, they require you to do the 700. Now on the 460, which is the contributions, a lot of public doesn't know this here. I believe there is some kind of a minimum contribution that you have to declare. And then again, I feel that this should be on the City of El Cajon's webpage, so that not everyone like myself has to run over to Angela in the office and request copies all the time. And once it's on there, everybody could see it under the transparency section of the webpage. And I would like to see somebody put that on the agenda sometime and take a vote on it. Let's see. And I noticed today on item number 11 about the homeless programs update. I'm anxious to hear about that, because you know how I feel about that. I've spoken about the homeless situation before and given you my experience with homeless people also. Let's see, and I'll be speaking about this civil code here in item number 13 also for elected officials and staff. And I think that's about all I have to say right now, unless somebody has questions. Nope. Ms. McCall? Not today, huh? Okay, good. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Our last speaker is Bonnie Price.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I would associate myself with the remarks by Jim Sirigliani and also support the gender equity issue that was brought forward. I think in all workplaces, women should have opportunities and not be held back by their gender. Part of the reason a lot of older people who are women are homeless or borderline is because they didn't have equal opportunity in their workplaces. I still remember when it was legal to advertise jobs for men and jobs for women. And jobs for women were always paid less, therefore their Social Security is less when they're older. And I think that we have to take positive, affirmative action steps to get this to happen, including on the City Council. We need to have a woman on City Council. You haven't had one for a couple of years. And before that, I only remember there were two, and a mayor who was a woman. But in East County, I know a lot of women are held back by their spouses, but I think you could take a positive step by supporting women on City Council. The final issue I want to discuss is I saw on the internet that there is increased activity at the internment camp. Some people are reporting that there is abuse of kids there. And I know that since this has been brought up before, that you do not handle the licensing or anything but zoning. But, you know, it does fall within your purview if kids are being abused. I would think that would be a police matter. So I would hope that you will look into this issue and not let us be on a par with Texas and Florida and other places where people are just dying because they're abused. Thank you.
Bonnie, just so you know, Ed, you're talking about the detention camp for minors?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to be going there at the end of this month.
Oh, good.
Thanks.
That should put them on notice. If you can get a blanket approval to go any day, spot inspections would be wonderful, so they wouldn't know when you're coming. And that would be highly effective.
One step at a time. Well, I'll go see them at the end of this month, and I'll let you know what I see.
Thank you.
Sure.
No more cards, sir.
Thanks. There are no written communications on today's agenda, and there are no public hearings for today's meeting. We have 5 administrative reports on today's agenda. Very ambitious staff. Item 11 is an update on the homeless programs. I'd like to ask staff to introduce this item. Hi.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. We're here today to provide you with an update of the 2 pilot programs serving the homeless funded by the City of El Cajon City Council and operating here in El Cajon. As you may know or recall, about 2.5 years ago, after several discussions with staff and the community, the City Council awarded funding for the 2 pilot programs, and both of these programs rely on our nonprofit partners for delivery of the program services. The Way Back Home program, as you know, reunites homeless individuals and families with family members outside of San Diego County. The program is distinctive because supportive family members must be identified and must be willing to receive and house individuals on the other end. The individuals are also connected with the local Salvation Army in that area for continuation of supportive services and for accountability. Between August of 2017 and July 13th of 2019, the Salvation Army has expended $13,135 in city funds and has reunited 54 individuals with supportive family. The cost per unification is $240 a person. Yeah. This graph is in your agenda report and shows us the number of persons housed by quarter. The third quarter is partial. It only goes through July 13th. And I've included another graph for you here that just shows the cumulative effect of the Way Back Home program. Another way of looking at it. Staff was excited to learn, but just about a week ago, Mr. Ortiz was there, that HEAP funding was awarded to the Salvation Army San Diego Corps for expansion of the Way Back Home program to the entire San Diego region. It's in conjunction with a prevention program, and for that program, the Salvation Army was awarded $900,000 over 2 years for both of those programs. And the Salvation Army reported to us that they used the data from our El Cajon program in their application for funding. And the Way Back Home program is or will soon be available to every core location throughout the county to assist homeless individuals to be reunited with supportive family members outside the region. In addition, the El Cajon Housing Connections program provides assistance in locating permanent housing for homeless individuals and families through the services of the dedicated housing navigator and with assistance of housing funds awarded by the City Council, as you know. The program elements include building relationships with homeless individuals on the street, case management to determine their service needs and readiness for housing, and connecting with landlords to obtain the housing, among other duties, I'm sure. To date, the Housing Navigator has found permanent housing for 77 individuals in 52 households. The entire program has used, the Housing Navigator part has used a total of $88,275 in housing assistance funds to accomplish this feat for the 77 individuals. The average cost per person housed is approximately $2,700 when you combine the two costs. originally for the Housing Navigator and the Housing Assistance Funds. This graph, which is in your agenda report, reveals the number of persons housed by quarter. And I've included a similar graph for the cumulative impact over time. So there are some additional analyses and interesting statistics we gathered, which are provided in the attachment to your staff report. I've aligned them side by side this time for comparison. East County Housing, El Cajon Housing Connections on the left and Way Back Home program on the right. And we are also pleased to advise you that the HEAP funding was awarded to Crisis House for expansion of the El Cajon Housing Connections program to the East County region. They tell me that a new housing navigator and a couple of new outreach coordinators will be added to serve East County residents, including El Cajon residents. And Crisis House will continue to utilize the housing assistance funds from the city to house El Cajon residents. Crisis House was awarded $300,000 over 2 years for this new regional program. And the new regional program will be called East County Housing Connections. And the combined program anticipates housing 40 households over 2 years, so 20 per year from El Cajon and 20 per year from the rest of the East County region, or 40 households per year. And Crisis House will use the HEAP funds to primarily serve individuals and couples without children. They will be working with Home Start, who also received HEAP funding. Home Start will primarily serve families with children. So in the past 21 months, these two pilot programs have secured permanent housing for a total of 131 individuals in 87 households. With total program expenditures combined, this equates to approximately $1,578 per household. Staff believes this has been an effective use of city's funds, directly assisting with the provision of permanent housing for homeless individuals in El Cajon. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Thanks. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Steve has a question.
Let's go back to the graph of number of persons housed by that one. Mm-hmm. The pace seems to be slowing down. Do you have an opinion why?
I do. We've talked about this, and we recognize that early in the program we reached, I think Karina would agree with me, they were able to house those that were easier to house, more ready to be housed. They had some form of income. They were situationally on the streets and were easy to get off the streets fairly easy early on. Now she's working with a much harder population, harder to place, I would say. And that reflects in the contracts we had with them when we initially said we would house 25 individuals or households, and we reduced it in the following year to 20 based on we knew it was going to be harder.
My second question is, there are 33 individuals still enrolled but haven't found housing for. Is that because housing is difficult to find? Do they need a certain kind of voucher or?
Sorry.
Mr. Goebel, I'd recommend that Ms. Hernandez maybe respond to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, we do have individuals. Some have gone to transitional housing to get a longer stability, or trying to apply for whether it's SSI or any other kind of voucher program. Some have gone into treatment centers, and so they're waiting that period out. As long as they're still willing to work with me and try to find housing and try to find employment, I have not taken anybody off the caseload.
Wait, say that for me one more time. As long as? They're
willing to work with me,
okay.
Whether it's coming clean, getting employment, or just, they're not completely ready to get off the street, but they're working to get off the streets. And so they do check-ins with me when they come to the resource center, and for that I keep them on the caseload.
Got it. Okay, great.
Gary?
Are some of those people at East County Transitional Living Center, and they're still on the list of 33, they're just waiting kind of to get their act together?
Unfortunately, not. Most of these individuals who are on my caseload are on the streets every day.
And the ones that are in transitional housing, what facilities are those?
So one was just at Interfaith Community Services in Escondido. I have one that is at Path, which is downtown, and they're utilizing those services first. So that means they're getting the whole wraparound services before going into permanent housing, because some of them are wanting to get clean before they go into housing. One of them trying to secure employment. We have people working towards getting Social Security, and so they're in the process of constantly having to meet with psychiatrists to get a full-on diagnosis.
Thank you.
This all addresses the city manager, and then you can divert it wherever you want to go. With a point-in-time count of unsheltered homeless of 288 at the beginning of this year, there's a lot of people who are not accounted for. When we say we have 33 in housing, there's over a couple hundred. Are these people who have been contacted and have not wanted help?
I can't ascertain how many of the people that are on the streets have been contacted, but I do know when we recently did an aggressive outreach during the month of June, that we outreached in a positive way to over 200 unique homeless individuals. So I'm going to make the assumption that a lot of folks that are on the streets have had some contact and have had some exposure to housing opportunity programs.
And that's an agenda item coming up soon, isn't that June program you talked about? The 30 Days of Hope?
It's not on the agenda tonight.
Not on the agenda today, okay.
Okay, any more questions? Thank you. Thank you both. Okay. Staff, did you have anything that you wanted to add to this?
No, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, we committed when we launched these programs initially that we would report to the council on a quarterly basis. We think that quarterly may be a little too much, but we think semi-annually is probably appropriate. So we'll probably do one around July, August time, and then we'll do another one in January and keep the council updated on where that's going. Unless the council is wanting more regular feedback, we're open for feedback on that.
What do you think? I think quarterly. You're proposing.
I'm proposing twice a year versus quarterly.
Twice a year work for everybody. I'm seeing nodding in agreement. So twice a year. Angela, do we have any speaker cards for this?
We have no cards, sir.
All right. Well, we don't need the open the public hearing. Council, any discussion, or would someone like to make a motion?
I've just got one last comment, or not a last comment, a comment. I'm very pleased to see that the work that the city has done has been leveraged into very large grants for these organizations beyond El Cajon. We have seemed to have carried an undue load in this area for quite a while. We've been begging other cities and communities to take part and help. So we hope that this grant money for these other regions certainly will encourage the outreach to these other parts of the community and certainly help us partner with everybody in getting people off the street into more healthy environments. So I'm very thankful for the city staff and their efforts in paving the way in leadership in this program.
Yeah, I'm also thankful for the number of people that were reunited with family members. I know that when we talk about these things, it's easy to get kind of lost in the numbers and lost in the concept that we got to get massive numbers of people into a program or it's not a successful program. But I would guess that the people that are now living with family members again and off the streets and hopefully doing better are not thinking about the numbers of people. They're just glad that you helped them. And I think it was, 52 families that are reunited? That's really impressive, and I think it's something to be proud of.
And one important statistic in there is, so how long do these people remain housed after we find housing for them? And the report states that 42 to 45% of people from either program, Way Back Home or through Karina's housing assistance, are still housed after 6 months. Almost half. That's a win.
That's a lot that's for this kind of thing, it's a very impressive statistic. Phil?
Really quickly, yeah, echoing what you both said, fantastic job from the city staff. and the nonprofits that we're partnering with. I do want to say it sounds like we found a helpful solution for a sector of people experiencing homelessness, and now we're going to keep this going. It seems like that's not to say that we figured it out. I think it's all a process of determining how we help the other sectors and how we manage that situation. So all that to say, great job. I think we still have work to do.
But I think the answer is that there's multiple answers.
Exactly.
This is one avenue to help a certain kind of person.
Yep.
And then there's other avenues that would help other people. So
Exactly.
Yeah, lots of work left to do. All right. Any more comments or thoughts? Thank you very much. Would still like to make a motion then.
I'll move that we receive the report from the city staff regarding the homeless program update.
Second.
Moved and second, please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Thank you. Item 12 is a report on the wastewater fund sewer service rate case. I'll ask staff to please introduce this item. Hi.
Hi, good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, Council members. I'm Yasmin Arellano, Deputy Director of Public Works, and I'm here today to request authorization from Council to notify our residents of a proposed sewer rate increase in accordance with Proposition 218 requirements. During this presentation today, I will share how a rate increase now will help us mitigate issues with our ability to maintain our critical infrastructure and deliver dependable sewer service to our residents. All wastewater from the city of El Cajon is transported and treated at the City of San Diego's metro system, along with 11 other participating agencies in the region. The final destination of all wastewater from the City of El Cajon is the Point Loma Wastewater Treatment Plant, displayed in this slide. The cost to treat and transport our wastewater to the Point Loma Wastewater Treatment Plant, or through the metro system, has increased over 45% since 2018 and has nearly doubled within the last decade. Metro costs already account for 55% of our sewer bill. Additionally, our pipelines and infrastructure continue to age, requiring more maintenance. Old, broken, and deteriorated clay pipes are being replaced with plastic pipes or lined in an effort to reduce maintenance cost. And over 60% of our system is over 60 years old. The city has only approved one multi-year rate increase within the last 20 years. As the price of treatment and transportation to Metro goes up, our sewer rate have not kept pace. If we don't take action now, the fund balance is in danger of going negative this year, and is displayed in this slide by the blue line. The gray line represents the industry recommended reserve target. We're going below that line currently, below the gray line, and will continue to drop if we don't do anything about raising costs that are passed on to us by Metro. These costs that are passed on to us are out of our control. To address this, we hire a consultant, NV5, to do a rate study. The study revealed initially that a 30% increase was necessary to maintain industry standard reserves and fund our full capital improvement program. In order to maintain our system, we need to invest approximately $10 million every year. Staff recognized that a 30% rate increase was too high and asked NV5 to run the same scenario, but with limited reserves. The results came back with a recommendation to have a rate increase the first year of 20%. So then we got more creative, and we went with minimal reserves, as well as we sliced our capital improvement program budget in half. In order to present the increases that we have today. What we have before you today includes a decreased wastewater capital improvement program while maintaining minimum reserves. The projected wastewater rate percentage increases are shown right here on the screen, and these figures show the average. These figures are for an average single-family residence bill. The proposed rates will allow us to avoid a negative fund balance, gradually increasing the fund balance to acceptable levels displayed in this chart by the orange line. So how do our rates compare within the region? Currently, we're the fourth lowest. And our projected rates will put us right in the middle of the pack. I'm seeking direction and authorization to follow the notification and public hearing requirements of Proposition 218 for our proposed sewer rate increase. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice report. Council, you have some questions? Start, Steve. Go on.
The chart right there, that's before some of these agencies are coming out with price increases.
That
right?
is correct.
So does this chart reflect those price increases, or is this before those chart?
This chart addresses, for one of the cities, a 5% potential rate increase that we knew at the time of the study. It's about 60 days probably up to date.
Okay,
from
so
the last 60 days.
Some cities could already be in the pipeline for increases, which would move us down the chart in terms of expense because they're already planning increases not reflected there yet. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'm concerned about the deferred maintenance. Cutting our maintenance by 50%, I understand the reason for the smoothing, but does that put us in a situation where we're taking undue risks?
Well, we're taking an aggressive approach, and we decided to take that aggressive approach because we were able to complete a massive wastewater improvement project, which was the Johnson Avenue pipeline replacement Phase 1 and Phase 2 with SRF funding. So that allowed us. We were able to invest in our capital improvement program an average of $9 to $10 million in the last couple of years. So in the next 5 years, taking that approach of a 50% reduced CIP, it's a risk that we're taking, but we consider that a 30% rate increase to our residents was pretty. Going to create a high impact.
It's a lot of money. Yeah, no doubt. My concern is, what's the biggest risk? And if we wanted to defer to Dirk, then we can do that as well. But I don't want to put us in a situation where we're tempting fate for a sewer breakdown or something that would end up costing us more in fees. And I know it's a lot more expensive to fix something that's broken than to maintain it before it breaks.
It's all a matter of looking at the system that we have and owning it in the way that it is. As she said earlier, as Yasmin mentioned, 60% of our system is clay pipe right now. And so we have looked at the worst area. We've actually added a new camera truck recently in which we're able to, this is in the last 2 years, that we're able to go and inspect these pipes. And so what we're looking at is a short-term maintenance plan so that we can get by without building our reserves and our CIP funds on the backs of our residents. We are going to annually inspect every single one of these pipes. So while there is a risk out there, we feel that we can mitigate it, and by reducing this, we're going to go after and get as many feet of our pipe lined that we can with the money that we are utilizing and budgeting for the next 5 years. So while we all have that concern, Mayor, with all due respect, we have looked at it, and we feel that we can mitigate it over the next 5 years to reduce the risk to the city justifiably.
So you're comfortable in recommending this plan?
Yes, we are.
Bob?
And by lining, you're talking about putting like a plastic liner inside the clay pipes that will make them last for how long?
Pretty much just as long as the new PVC pipes that we're installing in the ground. It is a great product and a great opportunity that we have to utilize this technology. Technology has come a long way in the last 5 years, and we're able to really take an aggressive look at this and address some of these problems in ways that we haven't been able to in the past. And so by doing this, we are able to extend the life of these pipes for a great deal of time. I think we have some pipes that are in the ground since the 20s. Most of them were installed in the 60s. And so we're looking at these very closely, and we feel that we are able to push out some of the major improvements that are less critical, but we know that they're on the timeline there without putting the system at risk. And so we're increasing the inspections to be able to do that, keeping an eye on it, and spending our money where it's needed. In the short term, in the next 5, possibly 10 years, but we will ratchet that up as we are able to get the fund balance up to where it needs to be, according to industry standard.
And I'm sure people don't want the sewer stuff boiling up in their houses or in their streets or wherever.
Well, I can give you an example. This last winter, we did have a collapsed failed clay pipe in which we had, we call it Rockzilla, where a big old football-sized rock actually went through the break in the pipe. It clogged it up, and it backed up into a house of some residents. Those residents were displaced for about a month while we had to go in and restore the house. There was sewage pretty much an inch deep throughout the entire house. So we do not want that to happen to our residents, and we want to keep a good eye on these things.
Is this rate increase going to sufficiently be enough to where we probably will be able to avoid that in the future?
Absolutely, and if you notice that we've been able to take a look at ways to pass on the costs that are being borne to us through the metro system and whatever outside treatment and transportation costs that we receive. So we are proposing to have a pass-through clause in this ordinance, which will allow us to adjust on the fly if things do take a turn for the worse that are out of the city of El Cajon's control.
Now, how was that rock able to get in there and damage that pipe if we're inspecting them? Was that kind of a...
The rock was, the break in the pipe was that big that allowed that rock to get in there.
Oh, so the pipe was already broken?
So the pipe broke, which allowed a rock to then lodge in there. So if we hadn't had a faulty pipe, the rock would have still stayed on the outside of that pipe.
Well, how do we prevent another break in a pipe that maybe another rock might come in and destroy the pipe and somebody's home?
Well, I would love to stand here and talk for hours about this because I can nerd out on it. I do love some sewage, and it's a lot of fun. But we do have an inspection program which is going through that. We look for offsets. We look for cracks, offsets where the pipes aren't aligned perfectly anymore. Our professionals who do this have a trained eye to look for those things, which would be a potential risk, and so that's the approach that we're taking, and taking very close details and notes on these things.
Am I right in assuming that the lining that you're talking about putting in will also prevent these kind of things from happening?
Absolutely, yes, sir. And the lining is only eligible on some of the pipes, so we will still have some pipes that are replacement, eligible for replacement. The lining is where we still have capacity in that line, and where the existing pipe is still formed sufficiently for us to put a new liner in there. But there are some, very few instances, but some instances where we are going to have to do full trenching and replacement.
So some of them are partially collapsed then?
In those cases, yeah, we wouldn't be able to align it.
Right. Okay.
Steve?
Are there grants for this kind of stuff also?
Not that I know of. There aren't a whole lot of grants out there for sewer replacement.
Okay.
Most of the grants that exist out there in today's world are mostly for circulation element type things for pedestrians and energy efficiency and things like that.
Okay. Let's go back to the chart, which was the numerical chart. The base rate, the O&M, and the capital improvement, and the total.
Keep going back.
The numerical chart had 4 lines on it. Right there. Okay, so O&M stands for operations and maintenance,
Yes, sir.
right? Okay. And capital improvements are money to actually fix structure rather than clean it out kind of thing, right?
Correct.
So probably the typical resident El Cajon is going to say, so what does this translate to in terms of dollars per month for an increase for me? Can you give us a sense of that?
Well, according to this chart here, which we've detailed, the bottom line there is you'll see rate increases from about $48 now as the average up to $55, $61, and so on throughout this chart. And so if you look at a monthly average bill, which we use an average bill of someone that uses 9.5 units of water on a monthly basis. And we use that 9.5 benchmark because that's what the industry standard for the county is, so that we can compare, like that other chart, us against other cities and agencies in the county. However, when we run our actual numbers, our city average is more like 8.5. So if we take our average that everybody uses, 9.5, these are the numbers, but the average resident in El Cajon is a little bit less than this, so those numbers will translate to a little bit lower.
So our sewer bills are based on 2 months, so your 8.5 is really 17 units of water during a water bill, which translates to our sewer bill, right?
Correct. So if you're looking at your water bill, trying to figure that out.
So it's about 17 units on a typical water bill.
Correct.
Would be what these rates are based on. So we're looking at about $6.50 increase per month in the early years, and 5 years from now, about an $11 increase per household. So $6.50 to $11 over the next 5 years.
Correct.
Now, one of the advantages of this also is that as we move towards advanced water purification in partnership with Padre Dam and the County of San Diego and one other who's escaping me, he looks to be outside the JPA, but certainly a partner in this. If 55% of these costs come from Metro, San Diego, and their big multi-billion-dollar pure water thing, costs are only going to go up a lot, I think, in that. So if we go to AWP, advanced water purification, I think we have more control over our sewer rates going forward when that represents. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, better control over the biggest chunk of the pie.
Great, thank you.
It's going to cost more to get this thing up and running, right, in the beginning, and that's built into this too?
Well, everything's kind of financed out, so it's a smoothing effect on these large projects, whether we're talking about pure water or advanced water purification. So it's not a huge upfront cost borne all at once. It's kind of a cost that's financed out over time and paid for over time.
Right. Good.
Well, thank you very much. That's a lot of information. I appreciate it. Nice report. Okay. Staff, did you want to interject anything before we take it to council?
No, sir.
Council, it's up for discussion. I didn't ask about public comment. Let me check on that. Do we have any cards?
No card, sir.
Okay. Good call, though, Bob. So, yeah, I'm always concerned about rate increases. It seems like this is the most reasonable approach. I wish we didn't have to put off deferred maintenance, but at the same time, I don't want to shock people with too much of a rate increase. It seems like the right kind of compromise to me. I don't know if anybody feels differently.
I think it's a good compromise because, as the Director of Public Works said when we had an incident last winter, that was a chunk of change out of the wastewater fund just for one address. That money could have been used for what we're describing here in these pipes much more efficiently. So I'm concerned if we don't address this deferred maintenance, we're going to end up with really expensive single incidents and still not fix the problem.
I think it's the responsible thing to do to normalize these rate increases. I think the presentation stated that we've had one increase in 20 years, so we haven't been able to keep up with the maintenance that's required. So smoothing it out, I think, is a good tactic. So yeah, I'm in agreement.
Let this be a good lesson to younger people on the council who might be here for a while. I know nobody wants to raise rates, but when you let it go for 20 years. Then you've got a mess like this. I think we should have been more proactive about seeing this coming. All right, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to direct the city clerk to set a public hearing on October 8th, 2019 at 7 p.m. regarding the proposed changes to the wastewater rates.
It's moved and seconded. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
And I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to proceed with the mailing of public notices in accordance with Proposition 218 regarding the proposed changes to rates.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
All right, thank you very much. Item 13 is for the Code of Ethics and Conduct for elected and appointed officials. Staff, would you tell us about this, please?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Earlier this summer, on June 11th, the City Council directed staff to come back with a draft policy that addressed ethics and the conduct of council members and appointees. Staff has reviewed existing city policies about this topic, has looked at some other policies adopted by other cities, and drafted a policy for the City Council to consider. Just as a refresher, and you have copies of these policies on the dais, but the city currently has 3 different types of policies that address the things that are addressed in the policy before you. One is City Council Policy A23 is a statement of ethical principles that includes about 33 different ethical statements that the council is expected to follow. City Council Policy A24 is a one-page policy that includes some broad-ranging topics of civility and identifies some places where there needs to be civility. And then building on that civility policy, the City Council recently adopted the Rules of Decorum and Enforcement, which modified the municipal code. The citation is on the screen, which identified 6 specific rules of decorum to be exercised by not only the City Council but the public during a City Council meeting. Staff also has provided and reviewed several policies from other cities, and we provided those not because we are enamored with those policies, but just to show you a range of what can be. So Arroyo Grande, for example, has a 2-page policy, where the city of Sunnyvale has a 19-pager. So there's a lot of different options that a city council can look toward. As the city drafted, our city staff drafted a policy for council consideration, we tried to balance simplicity with enough substance for the policy to be effective and meaningful. And through that, the staff has developed sort of 3 different components or sections of the policy that's included in your staff report. First, there's sort of an overview or an introduction of the policy, and this really includes some of the ideas that Mr. Ortiz brought forward as he presented this item for City Council consideration back in June. And it identifies being a steward to the public interest. It talks about acting in a manner that's above reproach, and it also talks about acting with honor, integrity, and wisdom. And these goals are sort of overarching, larger ideas that are then supported by 16 specific tenets that are included in the policy. Staff sort of took those tenets and took some of the items that were in that 33 statements of ethics and the 4 statements of civility and incorporated them and sort of, I guess, boiled them down into some really what we thought were powerful points that had enough substance, so a council member or a member of the public can say, okay, I understand what this means, and I understand its application to an individual, and it would be something that you could actually utilize as a tool to ensure that there is an ethical behavior and a civility amongst the council members. The last thing that staff included in this policy was a section about admonitions or censures. It's something that the City Council does not have anywhere in any of its policies or the municipal code. A lot of cities do. And again, there are a range of options that a City Council can consider. We explored some policies that set forth a form that a council member would submit to the city clerk, which would then trigger the formation of an ad hoc committee made up of council members that would be appointed by the mayor. But if the mayor were the one being censured, then there was a protocol for that. It's a very complicated manner of censure and admonition. Staff's recommending, again, more of a simplistic approach. We looked at some other policies and mirrored the draft policy based on those. We think there's sort of 3 types of admonitions or censures that can be considered. The first is more of a general admonition, and this could be something adopted by the council majority that's really directed to either the entire city council, just a reminder of this is a policy or this is a expectation of behavior that the entire council has, or can actually be directed towards an individual, but it's before findings occur or before there's a formal study of what has occurred, or if there's been a potential violation of the municipal code or of this policy. There's also an opportunity to have an informal admonition, and this would come from an individual council member. If they feel that a council member or other council members or a planning commissioner are acting inappropriately, it would be an opportunity for them during a council meeting to admonish one of their colleagues or one of your appointees. The last option, and this is the most official or the most severe, but that is in the form of a censure. And this would be an official reprimand or an official condemnation for a behavior or a violation of this code. It would also include the potential loss of city council appointments or other privileges. It does not include fines. It does not include docking of pay, for example. And it also ensures that the person that's being censured has their due process rights protected. So there would have to be a formal hearing where evidence is presented and the council would act in a judicial manner. These are sort of 3 extremes, one from being a very informal admonition to more of a very formal censure. And we think that this may be a nice step to first take as the council ventures into this. So in conclusion, staff, again, relied on our existing policies. We looked at other policies from other cities. We tried to strike that balance between simplicity and thoroughness, and we're seeking council's feedback on the policy that's been drafted. Based on that feedback, if we're on the right track, we would tweak things based on the comments from the council. We would bring that back for formal adoption. But if staff completely got it wrong and you wanted to go down a very different direction, we're open to that too, and we're looking for your thoughts and comments. We're here to answer questions.
Okay. First off, do we have speaker cards on this item?
Sir, we have 1 speaker card.
Let's do the speaker cards and we'll come back and have the discussion.
Mr. Jim Sirigliano.
Councilman Ortiz, thank you. Thank you again for first bringing this up. There's a lot of latitude with everything was just said there. You know, it's a little bit we have to wait and see, I guess. But I'll just simply say 3 things that I feel about that. There should be a voice of conscience, okay, required, civil disclosure, and an uprising of decency, okay. And that can apply to public also, Okay, but that's about all I have to say about that. But like I said, this sounds very wide and open yet, about how it's all going to be handled. And there's a lot of options, it sounds like. But so it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future as something may arise. Okay, and thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Any more?
No more cards, sir.
Okay. All right. So then we get back to questions. Phil, do you want to start?
I don't have any questions. Just to kind of reiterate when I brought this up, I think this code of conduct is going to be a barometer for the public to know how elected officials should be conducting themselves. It should be a tool when the public is voting. And I got to tip my hat to the city staff. They took the spirit of what I wanted to accomplish and they put it into practical, measurable actions for electeds and appointeds. So I'm happy with it. I read through it a couple times. I don't know if any other council members have any comments or questions.
Well, I have a little different take, but we can get into that. I kind of think that these things can get too complicated, and they can become real legalistic. I kind of would like to see it be simple, kind of like a Ten Commandments type of thing, where we could use the thing. I mean, like for example, we had an issue where a council member had been accused of using city staff to settle a dispute he was having in his neighborhood. So, an answer to that would be council members will not override the chain of command and request services of staff without approval of the city manager. I mean, it's simple. It's not debatable. So I personally would like to redirect staff towards a simple 10 to 20 basic common decency expectations that we would have of other city council members. I mean, for example, I look at this and I say, this is on the City of El Cajon City Council Policy Statement of Ethical Principles. Assist in the clarification of community goals, objectives, and policies and plan making. Well, I think that's kind of part of our job description, but I don't know if it's part of the code of conduct. It's not an ethics issue. Another one is pay special attention to interrelatedness of decisions and the long-range consequences of present actions. Completely something we should all be doing, part of our job description, but I don't think it's a code of conduct issue. Whereas disparaging somebody on social media that you are is one of your colleagues that's definitely not in your job description.
That's in the past.
Well, I mean, that's why we're here. We're here because we had a nightmare in the past, and we didn't have anything. We didn't have a plan to deal with it. Now, so anyway, I'm not set on this. It's just a recommendation. But I wonder if we could just simplify the whole process, make some basic codes of conduct that everybody can live with, and not make it so complicated that it would be hard for people to figure out what it meant and argue about that. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think the simpler the better. And my primary concern is that people coming up to express their opinion or ask us for help aren't disparaged by any council members or planning commissioners. That's really important to me. They have to be, even if they disagree with us, they have to feel comfortable coming up and giving their opinion and not be subject to attacks on social media or someone making a video and disparaging an organization and showing it at the council meeting. Yeah. I think that kind of thing is really terrible.
I think we should require all council members to be polite and civil to anybody who comes up and speaks to us, no matter whether we agree with them or don't agree with them. And I think that if you insist upon being rude or aggressive, that you could be censored for that or go through the process.
I agree. I think that's important.
I'm kind of a First Amendment kind of person. As much as I hate the disparaging videos that were done against organizations, I almost feel like that's a council member's free speech. Unless it disrupts a meeting, and we've talked about disruption before, that it interrupts the flow of business, keeps business from getting done. As much as I really don't like some of the things, I think that's part of America, is you get to say what you want, especially as an elected official. We don't like it. It's repulsive in some senses, but that is America.
Here's the difference, and I totally agree with you about protecting the First Amendment, but the difference is that we're not saying we're going to dock your pay or kick you out of the organization if you don't comply. We're saying that if you don't meet the standards, that you will be censored. What does that mean? All that means is that you get our public free speech to say as a body we don't like it, and so nobody's free speech is Councilman Bozo comes up, gets elected, and he's rude to everybody and he's horrible to everybody, and we censor him. What happens to him? Nothing. But we make it public. And I think the important thing is that we're telling the people that live here, we're going to fight for you. We can't violate his First Amendment rights, but we will tell him he's wrong, and we will tell him that it's not acceptable, and we will fight for you. So does that make sense in that respect?
It does, and I think in the past you have censured other people who have done things which have sent them to jail. And the council has issued a censure of that person.
Sure.
It is a political statement. There's no power to it other than we disagree with what this person's done, and I think that does have value. I, too, am a little wary of getting a whole lot of details. I think the more details we start to write into things, I feel like we start to infringe on free speech. And you get into a muddy area there. It's also creating family rules. It's like you're watching a family up here argue among yourselves, and that's really awkward to watch family members argue, but that's just part of the open, transparent process of government, unfortunately. And I'm less is best.
I agree with you. I also think that we should be careful about using the set of rules as a political club. Whether you agree with what's happening in Washington or not, there are many people who believe that the President of the United States is being threatened with being removed from the presidency because they don't like his politics, and I don't want us to get involved in it. If we have a situation where we have a 3-2 majority here, and the 3 want to punish the 2 because they don't like their politics, and so they use the censorship opportunity. I think that's completely wrong, and we should quantify that in our writings that we don't want this to happen. I mean, it won't stop it. If people are bound and determined to censor you because you've said something that's politically offensive to them, then they'll do it. But I think we should at least acknowledge the fact that shouldn't happen.
I guess my question to Councilman Ortiz, since this was your passion, do the existing policies cover what you had hoped to, or is there something missing that's been added that you want?
When I looked over it, it was like city manager stated, it was rather convoluted, and there was no overarching theme of how we should be conducting ourselves as elected officials. The beginning portion that I wrote does stay very high level, and it does not get into specifics. And I can see the rabbit trail we can get into if we go with specifics.
I have a suggestion, Mr. Ortiz.
Please.
Why don't you have a subcommittee that it doesn't have to be long and drawn out. It can have one meeting. But a subcommittee that will write up a draft for the staff to look at and make sure that it passes the legal test, and then come back to us.
Graham, does this draft fall in line with any kind of legal test?
So the draft that's in the staff report has been reviewed by the city attorney. And we try to take the 33 tenants that are currently in the A23 policy that you have in front of you right now and condensed it down to 16 points. And in looking at those 16 points, there's maybe there are items such as conflict of interest, gifts and favors, use of public resources that are currently covered by FPPC and state law. So those are maybe some items that could drop off. I think we could get what's in your staff report down to 10 or maybe 12 commandments if you're willing to expand that a little bit.
That's fine. Would you rather do this and bring it back to us based upon the discussion you've heard, or would you want to go through the process of having a subcommittee to give you a draft? I'm open to either one.
Either one. We can take I think we got some good comments tonight, and I think we can narrow it down and boil it down. And if the council is so inclined, since this is Mr. Ortiz's initial idea, we can actually have him sort of be the first one to look at it and maybe give us some feedback and then bring that back if the council's okay with that notion.
Well, I'm satisfied with that. I trust
that.
I trust the staff to do a good job of that.
I think the censure aspect is important because I want to protect the public. That's the number one issue. They have to feel comfortable coming up here and saying whatever they need to say. We might not like it, but council members should never verbally attack or disparage or humiliate any public speakers or attack them on social media. That's really important to me. We get all attacked all the time. That's what we get paid for. So, by the public. So that's not that doesn't bother me. They have to see what they believe. But I think we always have to be polite to the public. We can say, no, I disagree with you. Here's why. But don't start calling them names or try to humiliate them.
Okay, it looks like we've come to a consensus. Would somebody like Phil? Would you like to make a motion then?
Yes.
You can just word it any way you want because it's not going to be in
Move
there,
that the City Council consider staff analysis regarding the Code of Ethics conduct to revise and provide more feedback.
Move in second, please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Great discussion. Talked about Constitution and everything. That's great. All right. Item 14 is an update on the city ticket and distribution policy. And staff, please tell us about this. Oh, hello. How are you?
Well, how are you?
Great.
Okay. Perfect. Hi, good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and City Council. My name is Ryan Villegas. I'm an analyst in the City Manager's Office, and I'm here today to discuss a necessary update to City Council Policy 828, which is the city's ticket and distribution policy. And then as you can tell by the image right there, that this does have to do with the opening of the Magnolia in less than a month, which we're all excited for. And if you can tell, the new sign is up on the building, which is pretty exciting. So Policy 828 was adopted back in 2008 and was meant to be an outline for how complimentary tickets were to be received by the city, primarily as it related towards the East County Performing Arts Center. It was based on the California Fair Political Practices Commission's ruling that any recipient of a ticket was to fill out what they call Form 802, which disclosed their name, the reason for them having received the ticket, and then also as well this information was to be posted publicly on the city's website within 45 days of the event. And in 2009 is when the East County Performing Arts Center closed due to budget cuts for the related to the recession. And so now that the city is preparing to reopen the facility as the Magnolia, staff has reviewed the commission's rules to find out any updates that have happened in the last 10 years. So some of the highlights of the updates. There's one would be the disclosure of family relationships if a ticket is transferred to a family. So if you bring your spouse or your niece or your nephew, then that relationship would be disclosed on Form 802. There's an option to reimburse the city within 30 days now. So if someone wishes to reimburse the city for the fair value of the ticket, they can do so, and then they would not be subject to 828. And then also there's a prohibition of the disproportionate use of tickets by any single individual. So the Fair Political Practices Commission doesn't actually define what disproportionate use is, so that may be something that the City Council would want to consider or discuss. But it seems that if someone were to get a complimentary ticket for every event from now until the end of the year, that might be a disproportionate use. But that's to be considered. So the management agreement between the city and Live Nation entitles the city to 10 tickets per event, but not to exceed 300 in 1 year. And that's for any Live Nation event that's open to the public, and then it's up to the city to decide how the city wants to distribute or administer these 10 tickets. So staff reviewed or researched various agencies throughout Southern California who have venues that are similar to ours, to the Magnolia, and to study how they administer their complimentary tickets. So first we have the City of Vista with our Moonlight Amphitheater. So the employees of the city don't actually get any complimentary tickets in Vista. They're able to view or watch the final dress rehearsal before the opening performance free of charge. And then if they wish to watch a live performance, then they would just purchase a ticket, but they do have a deal on the first Friday of the month that they can purchase the tickets for $241. And then the City of Chula Vista has the North Island Credit Union Amphitheater. This is also a Live Nation venue, and there the city is entitled to 12 complimentary tickets. And there the city distributes a pair to each of their 5 foundations, and they use that for fundraising purposes. And then the remaining pair goes to a nonprofit whose headquarters or main office is located in the city of Chula Vista. If after all of that there's any tickets that are left over, then a department is selected, and then the department director can select an employee to recognize him or her for outstanding service to the city. Next we have Riverside. They have the Fox Performing Arts Center, also a Live Nation venue. The city of Riverside formed or sponsored the creation of the Fox Foundation. It's a nonprofit that works to connect kids to the arts, kids and seniors to the arts. And the city actually gives all of the tickets that they have, their complimentary tickets, to the foundation, and then it's up to the foundation how they want to distribute the tickets there. And in the city of Anaheim, they have various venues there. And in that city, the decision for distributing these tickets rests in descending order, beginning with the mayor, and then it goes to the city council, the city manager, deputy city manager, and then the department directors after that. So those are some practices for various venues and agencies around Southern California. Some additional options for the city of El Cajon might be to spur economic development, to help to draw developers into the downtown or just to the city in general. It could be used for a tool for that. Employee retention and morale can be used perhaps to raffle off a pair of tickets to employees, and then that way it helps to boost employee morale. And then, of course, another option would be to do nothing. The city can always step back, or may choose to step back and just kind of observe the venue to see how it performs as a revenue generator for a period of like 6 to 12 months, and then revisit the complimentary tickets in the future. So to conclude, staff is seeking council direction, one, to revise Policy 828 to include the updates to the FPPC code. 2 would be to update the language from the East County Performing Arts Center to the Magnolia. And then 3 would be for direction on distributing the complimentary tickets for the Magnolia. And staff is happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. Let me see if there's any questions. Questions? That was a pretty comprehensive report. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any speaker cards?
No speakers, sir.
Super. Council, questions? I want to discuss it, talk with staff about it. It seems the first 2 seem pretty just housekeeping items. The main question is, what do we do with the complimentary tickets? Might I suggest that we punt this to the city manager for a period of time, let him make the decision on how to distribute the tickets until we've got a consensus of what it really looks like. We really know nothing about this, what it's going to be like, and then maybe revisit this in 6 months and see if we need to make a change. My guess is that Graham will do a good job of deciding where the tickets should go. All right. Then, Graham, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I mean, one of the challenges that we have is even the management agreement gives us 10 tickets per event, with a maximum of 300 tickets. So contractually, there's supposed to be 50 events. That means that's 500 tickets, which is over the 300. So at some point, some decisions are going to have to be made just to stay within, unless we just want to blow through our complimentary tickets in the first 6 months. So there is some value of sort of slow rolling this and seeing kind of how it goes, how it feels. And as if the council's okay giving me some discretion of how to manage that, we'll probably do a couple different things and see how that feels and how that works out, and then we'll bring back something more concrete for the council to formalize in the future. But in the meantime, based on what we heard tonight, we will come back and revise A28 to include the FPPC updates and also to include the Magnolia as part of that policy.
Thanks, Greg. Do you need 3 separate motions, or?
I think just really it's just direction. There's really no direction, and maybe a motion on giving me just some discretion of the complimentary tickets.
All right, well, then I'll make a motion to do just that and to send it back to you for review. Moved and seconded, please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
All right. The last administrative report is item 15 regarding facility rental rates for the Magnolia. Staff, please tell us about this.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you probably know, all the venues that the city rents out for events, we have an adopted fee schedule. It's part of the fee schedule that the city council reviews every year. Right now, because the East County Performing Arts Center has been closed for the last decade, we do not have a rate fee or rate schedule for the Magnolia. And so what we're doing tonight is proposing a rate schedule for the Magnolia, including a resolution for city council consideration. As we get ready to open, it'd be good to have rates ready to go now. In reality, most of the acts or the rentals will be managed 100%, negotiated 100% by Live Nation, but there will be local groups, community groups, nonprofit groups that may want to utilize our facility. And I think one of the things that we had talked about is ensuring that this is still accessible to the public, to our own community. And so having some local rental rates makes a lot of sense. So if a local group wanted to rent it, they would work through us to a certain degree quickly with Live Nation, but it would be good to have rates established now rather than Live Nation trying to negotiate the highest possible fee they can, which they will do in most acts. But for a local community group, having a set rate makes a lot of sense. Staff presents some rates for the council to consider. These rates break the venue into a lot of different areas. For example, if an event needed to buy out the entire venue, that would include the stage, the auditorium, the lobby space, the plaza, there would be a certain rate, and we're recommending $6,000 for a single event for that. But there may be chances or opportunities for just the stage to be leased out. Maybe there's a wedding reception that would like to have it on the stage. There's an opportunity to make money off of that. Or a birthday party in the VIP lounge is an opportunity to rent that space out. Opportunity to rent out the upper or lower or the Centennial Plaza as part of the outdoor space. And so we've broken up the space. We've looked at our current rates to make sure that these are in line with our current rates for similar venues. We've also talked to Live Nation to understand the market, and we've looked at other venues in the region to identify these rates. So staff's recommending that these be the rates that the city includes as part of its rate schedule. We did look at, Mr. McClellan, did you have a question?
How about nonprofits?
So this would be for the nonprofits, and I'll get to how we can help those groups. But this would be sort of a city slash nonprofit rate, because if you're a for-profit, a Broadway production, you wouldn't go through us; you'd go through Live Nation. So this is really more of the nonprofit group, local community groups.
But would that be $6,000 or the stage $600 per per night?
You might.
Or would it be $6,000 for 2 or 3 night performance or whatever?
Well, if you were buying out the venue for a performance, it would be $6,000 per day. But if you just needed the stage for dress rehearsals, it would be $600.
Remember, we're setting aside a fund to help give scholarships to, and he'll get to that in a few minutes. So there is a way to make that local, like, middle school band or a dance studio could afford to do this, right?
Well, what I was thinking about is some of the groups that used to use it, nonprofits, such as CCT or CYT and things like that. I don't think they could afford $6,000.
Well, I'll talk about that in a second.
We have a solution.
Okay.
So we did look at how the rates that we're proposing stack up against other venues in the region, kind of similar venues. We identified the per seat cost for the rental, and we're in the market. We're in the market range. In fact, we're about $1 less than the Kroc Center. And the reality is there's a lot of groups that would love to perform in the Magnolia that probably shouldn't perform in the Magnolia because they're only going to use up a fraction of the Magnolia. There's probably better venues for them to go to. And that's why we showed some of these venues, because I think these are some appropriately sized venues for some of our local community theater. But we'll get to how to accommodate some of our local groups. So one of the things that the staff report identifies is staff would recommend that we set aside, at least for year one, about $1,500 out of the general fund to help subsidize the rent payment for some of these. I'm sorry, $15,000. Sorry, $15,000. We do think there are some. There's important to have some criteria, and I'll just run through these. One, I think the group should be a nonprofit organization or a not-for-profit organization. The staff report includes a San Diego-based, maybe it's more of a local base or more of a regional base. I think that's something that the city council could discuss. There's some value in having it more localized. There's some value in having it a little bit more more regionally appealing as well. We'd recommend one event per year. We'd also recommend that the group should be able to occupy 60% of the venue. I think it's important. Again, if you only can sell 300 tickets or will have 300 people, there's probably better venues for you to go to than the Magnolia. There are other fees that are not included in that, let's say, $6,000 rental. There's Live Nation staffing costs. There's the $2 per seat fee that we're charging for facility maintenance. If there's the need for equipment rental, that would be included. There's cleaning charges that would be included. So we're not recommending that those fees be covered, that they be covered by the organization. If there are seated events, so if you were to buy a seat and expect to be able to sit in row C, seat 4, those types of ticketed events need to be managed by Live Nation, so you'd go through Ticketmaster for those tickets. And then until we have a process up and running, staff would recommend that each applicant be approved by the city council. And so you'd have an opportunity to review that and have some weigh in of whether that is a good use of taxpayer money. So staff is available to answer any questions that you may have about the rates or about the city subsidy policy as well.
Questions? Let me first see if there's any speaker cards.
No speaker cards,
Okay,
sir.
then questions. Bob.
We used to have schools that would come in and do things in the Elkhorn Performing Arts Center and things like that during the daytime. When the facility generally isn't too busy because most of them are night performances. So we have a program for that. Say if the public schools want to come in and put on a...
Yes, the management agreement has actually a certain number of city events that can go in without charge. Yeah. I mean, if we're using Live Nation technicians, we would have to pay for that.
Right.
But it also includes the school district, so they are eligible for access to it. But again, if there were the need for a sound technician or lighting technicians, there would be an expectation that they would cover those costs.
And I don't know what the program was when the schools would come in and do a program, or whether they were charged, or what they paid in expenses, or I don't know what that was, and I don't know if we should maybe look back and see what was being done there, because obviously they should cover the same expenses that they were at that time, and probably adjusted for inflation.
Bob, I know that CCT had school days performances because my kids were in them.
Right.
So they would have maybe a 2 o'clock or noon performance.
Right.
And then they'd bus kids in from all around East County to come see the show.
Right.
I think that's maybe what you're referring to.
Right, exactly.
So we saw a rate for city/nonprofit events. We know that Live Nation's going to cover the rental fees in the management artists that it manages. But let's say a corporation says, you know what, we're going to bring a meeting to El Cajon. We're going to put our people up in the courtyard in the Hampton, and we want to use the Magnolia for our business meeting. Who charges them a rate, or who negotiates those rates?
That would probably be more of a city rate, because it's not a type of a venue that Live Nation's used to using or negotiating with, so they'd rely on this city rate.
Okay. And in the December 2017 contract draft, we got 10 days for the city to use at no expense. Is this what you're talking about? Discretionary could be given to school districts or some things under your discretion?
That's correct.
Okay. The other $15,000 from the general fund, that's really the money of the people of El Cajon. So I guess my question for my colleagues is, do we want to give that money to nonprofit organizations outside the city of El Cajon? If you're a nonprofit from Poway, such as a pageant, or a community concert like the La Jolla Chamber Music Society, and you wanted to come out to use a Magnolia, should the people's money be used to subsidize those out-of-city events? Is there a benefit to the city? Is it a cost? What are thoughts there?
I think a couple questions. One is, would the people of El Cajon be able to go and be part of that? So if the Chamber Music Society came, could you go and listen to them? I think that would, if they couldn't, it was a private event, that might mitigate that. But the way I look at it from the historic perspective is that it was always the East County Performing Arts Center. So we included Santee and Lakeside and Alpine and Blossom Valley in that, and I think that it seems to me it makes sense to continue to offer those up, and it's the cost of doing business of having a regional performing arts center. I don't know if anybody has any feelings about that. Or do you want to make, I guess Steve's point, well taken, is that do you want to make it just El Cajon?
I have a question. Is there a lot of inquiries from groups lining up to use this space already? Are we going to be faced with the decision to say Carlsbad groups can't come and El Cajon can't, What does that look like?
We have a lot of local groups that have expressed interest, and frankly, they're probably more than half of them probably would not meet some of this basic eligible criteria. For example, we have a local dance studio that has several classes that would like to do a dance recital there. I cannot imagine a dance studio on Broadway has the capacity to fill that venue. So I think we'll be probably turning away a lot of folks and giving them other places.
I got to tell you,
the mayor disagrees.
I went to 15 years of Diane's School of Dance recitals at that place, and it was packed every time.
Okay, so
two shows.
So I could be wrong.
But they didn't have to pay the tickets, did they?
No. It was. I mean, they got a special rate.
Yeah.
There's no way a small dance studio could afford $6,000 a night. So anyway, I'm open to this. My first reaction is we started off as a regional performing arts center. Places like Lakeside and Poway, or not Poway, but Lakeside and Alpine are not going to be able to afford their own performing arts center. It seems neighborly to provide that to them unless it becomes a problem. I guess then we can come back and relook at it. But if you guys feel differently, I'm open to the idea. Yes, sir.
Well, for example, I know that CCT put on Traditions of Christmas for probably 20 years. They had usually about 17 performances and sometimes sold out. Probably 80% of the venue was sold out. So if they wanted to put on 10 performances, then they'd have to pay the $6,000 times 10.
Well, I mean, we have some money available as a scholarship for that. But probably not enough for 6 performances. You're right.
They may not use all the venues either.
It's probably those days are probably past since we brought on this management company.
And then we have the Grossmont, what was it called? Grossmont Symphony?
Yeah.
They used to pack the house.
Yeah. But if somebody came in and just wanted to put on a performance and just use the stage and maybe the lobby, they wouldn't need the plaza or the Centennial Plaza or are those places within the Magnolia? The plaza, the Centennial Plaza?
Yeah, that's all inside
Upper
there.
Plaza.
Correct.
So they could pick and choose what portions of it rather than pay the $6,000 and buy the whole thing.
Well, I mean, I think realistically, if they want to put on a show, they're going to use the stage. So.
Yeah, well, the stage is $600.
But then, yeah, and then they could rent out a small portion of the seats, right?
I don't know if you could do that. And the stage means just the stage, no auditorium. So if you're having a wedding reception, you could have it just on the stage and no one's sitting in a seat.
Yeah, but if you're putting on a concert, you've got to have the light technician, you've got to have the sound technician, you've got to sell the tickets on Ticketmaster. So it's probably not the place to do that.
Right. Okay. Just asking questions.
No, it makes sense. Phil.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about, this is a new performing arts center. We want to create some buzz, so I don't want to limit other regions from using it, especially if there's not a line of people waiting to do it. If for some reason we find in the future that there's a huge line, maybe we give a preference to El Cajon groups or East County groups, but I don't want to limit ourselves from bringing in other groups that's going to, they're going to rent it out, they're going to go eat at our restaurants, they're going to become more acquainted with El Cajon, create a relationship, bringing other people from other cities into El Cajon. So I don't want to stomp out right away the idea of having it be a regional, open it up to the entire region.
But we know that Live Nation is going to bring people from other venues that they have and just move them from place to place to place to place. And we're going to participate in some of those venues that they bring in. So it's going to take up a lot of this time at the Magnolia. And there won't be a lot of times that it'll be open for other groups and things too.
So then maybe we do have a preference for, El Cajon groups.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm just sensitive to the people of El Cajon saying, that was our $8 million that made this place work. So I can see an El Cajon nonprofit who qualifies saying, man, I really wish we could have gotten in there, but the money was used by somebody out of El Cajon. I get the regional thing, I really do, but if you're an El Cajon organization, if you're an El Cajon taxpayer, shouldn't they get preference?
Would it be, I think what Phil had recommended was starting off as a regional center and then if it becomes an issue, modifying the policy. Does that seem reasonable?
That works. I just don't want to say, sorry, El Cajon nonprofit, you do great work in our city here, but we gave it away to Carlsbad.
And remember that every one of these decisions are going to come to the council. So I think if somebody came from Carlsbad, it would be reasonable to say at the city council meeting, I love what you're doing. I think it's great that you want to use us, but it might make more sense to go somewhere in the North County because we have lots of people trying to get in.
The economics of such are not bad. $6,000. If you're saying you got to get at least 60% of the facility, I think there's about 1,000 seats, and then room for 1,200 if you include the VIP area. So if there's 1,000 seats and you got to fill 600 seats, that's $10 a ticket to cover the venue buyout, plus the operational costs of things like that. You ought to be able to sell your tickets for at least $10 for a facility like this if you're a nonprofit to use this kind of facility.
And I would like to use or have the people that were using it prior to it shut down have kind of a preferential treatment as far as being able to come in and put on their shows, because they're the ones that were kind of shut out all of a sudden, and they haven't been here in a while, and if they want to come back, I think we ought to treat them right.
Completely understand what you're saying, but I think if just to be completely honest, if we're talking about CCT coming in doing 10 or 12 consecutive days of a Christmas show, that probably is not going to happen anyway, because we're never going to have that many consecutive days available because of Live Nation. So I think those days have passed.
Maybe Live Nation would work around them. You know, they've got a lot of different venues that they move around, and they could maybe work around that space and time. I don't know.
Well, I think we could encourage Graham. The encouragement from Councilmember McClellan is to try to find a way to work with some of the traditional acts that would come here and find a way to get them to have some availability.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a lot of sense, because so you'll work on that.
Certainly. But remember, every time we as a city impose restrictions, we hurt our own profitability. And I'll give you an example. One of the things that the Fox Theater in Riverside was adamant about is that they have Broadway productions. Well, Broadway productions lose money. They don't make money. They're a big money loser because of just the sheer cost. Also, booking the theater for weeks at a time, and the ticket sales don't justify the cost. But that was something that was important to the city of Riverside. But the city of Riverside also experienced deficit for the first 3 years because of that. So,
yeah.
I mean, these are the balances that we're going to experience as we get to understand the facility and start working with Live Nation on these things.
Obviously, this is a discussion we could have for quite a long time. What specifically do you need us to give you tonight?
So, specifically, the recommendation is that the City Council adopt the fee schedule, the resolution which adopts the fee schedule, and then based on the feedback that we heard tonight, we will implement a subsidy program, and we will make a budget adjustment at the mid-year budget to accommodate that. And we may find out that $15,000 was too much or not enough, and we'll be flexible in that adjustment as we get to the mid-year budget.
And then at what point in that will you note that the decision of the City Council is, at least for the time being, to continue to have this to be a regional focus on people that can use the theater, and then we'll reevaluate if it becomes a problem?
I think that's similar to the language that's currently in the staff report. So if the feedback is to continue that regional approach, then we'll continue to implement that.
All right. Council, everybody satisfied?
Bear in mind, we can revisit this in 6 months and
revisit in 6 weeks.
Yeah, and just tweak it a little bit. We see what's happening when it opens up.
And the criteria still is that the groups come before City Council. Am I understanding that? So
that's correct.
Yeah.
So this will be an adventure. We're going to find out a lot more 6 months from that we know today.
Yeah.
All right. Would somebody like to make a motion then?
I'll make a motion that the City Council adopts a resolution approving the facility rental rates and fee structure for the Magnolia.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
All right. There are no commissioner reports today. Item 16 is my activities report. Item 17 is the legislative report, and it's as reported. No updates today on this. Councilmember Gary Kendrick, what are your activities reports?
As reported.
Councilmember Bob McClone. Deputy Mayor Steve Goebel.
As reported, with a note that the first event at the Magnolia is September 12th, right? Queen Nation?
That's correct.
They are playing this Friday night at Santee Concert in the Parks. If anybody wants to go preview them.
Yeah, good idea.
Thursday.
Santee Concert in the Park, in case anybody wants to hear who's going to be our opening act.
Super. Councilmember Phil Ortiz.
I actually didn't submit a report, so I'm going to state it verbally. July 25th, had a meeting with Seritage Properties about the old Sears building, the old Sears building at Parkway Plaza. July 27th, 28th, I was introduced to the congregation at Foothills Church. July 30th, a meeting with resident George Glover about a potential Veterans Memorial. July 31st, Homeless Task Force meeting, East County Homeless Task Force meeting. August, wait a minute. I'm out of order here. Yesterday, the League of California Cities monthly meeting, and yesterday as well, meeting with Steve Voss, Mayor of Poway.
Wonderful. All right. There are no joint council reports today. There are no general information items on today's agenda. There are no first or second readings of ordinances on today's agenda. We are now at closed session. Mr. City Attorney, will you please recite the title and lead us into closed session?
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council will be adjourning to closed session on two items. Item 22 is a closed session for a conference with legal counsel on anticipated litigation. Pursuant to paragraph 4 of subdivision D of Government Code section 54956.9, there's one potential case. The facts are as stated in the agenda with a notice of intent to sue the city under CEQA laws by Coast Law Group representing Climate Action Campaign that relates to the city's climate action plan. The second is a closed session for conference with legal counsel on existing litigation pursuant to paragraph 1 of subdivision D of Government Code section 54956.9. The name of the case is Jargis versus City of El Cajon.
Thanks. May I have a motion then to adjourn the closed session?
So moved.
Second. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to closed session. We'll be back in probably just a few minutes. Thank you. We're back from closed session. I will turn it over to the attorney.
Thank you, Mayor Lewis. Mayor Wells. Sorry. It's been too many years, I guess. The City Council met in closed session on two items. The first one was a conference with legal counsel on anticipated litigation. Item 22, the City Council was briefed on the matter. And the second item is one for existing litigation. On item 23, Council gave direction to its legal counsel. The City Council gave direction to its legal counsel. Thank you.
Angela, I understand that there's somebody else who didn't get a chance to speak that wanted to speak.
Yes, sir. Under public comment, Mr. Richard Hine.
Mr. Hine. Sorry you had to wait for the whole thing.
Afternoon, Mayor, Council. Thank you for taking some time out for me today. My name is Richard Hine. I am the operations manager for ASAP Towing. They're located at 581 South Marshall. 581 South Marshall was the original specialized processing building, which back in 14, as you recall, had DTSC, which is the Department of Toxic Substance Control Issues, where the building was demolished, and a LUC was devised by the DTSC limiting use for 581 in, at this point, they consider perpetuity because of vapor control, which is necessary to keep the property completely sealed and no digging allowed on the property itself. Basically allowing us one major option, which is parking, and that's the only thing that it can really be used for. Initially, I had spoken to staff inside of planning and was told that there was a change with regards to zoning, which would no longer allow for the tow company to be able to go on to 581. I just spoke with planning further, and our initial plan was to try and get zoning changed for 581. But according to planning, there is an option to be able to work with the current zoning and be able to change with the CUP that would allow the trucks, not for impound, but only for the vehicles that are owned by ASAP Towing to be put onto the property, as well as any of the vehicles for what would be employee only, not damaged or wrecked. So basically what I'm looking for is, for right now, as long as the CUP can be established, all well and good. But if it's not, then I would need to have council's assistance on trying to get zoning change done so that ASAP Towing can remain on 581, which is the only kind of company that would really be apt to be able to fit on the property.
Sorry about your troubles. It sounds like you're on the right track with planning. If that somehow falls through and you feel like you need assistance, then please come back and request our assistance, and we will do whatever we can to help.
Absolutely, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for waiting.
Thank you.
All right, this brings us to adjournment. The regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council and El Cajon Housing Authority held this 13th day of August 2019 is adjourned till Tuesday, August 13th, 2019 at 7 o'clock p.m. See you this evening.